So, hi and welcome. I'm here with John, the representative of Clean. And John, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and what Clean is all about?
So Clean started out from a book by Dr. Alejandro Junger, which was focusing all on cleansing and detox. And then I got connected because a good friend of mine, Drew Mill, is the CEO, was one of the founders of the company. And I had been connected with him in the health communities in New York. And I had gone through my own struggles with health, and I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. So a lot of these reasons why I've come to dealing with issues like wellness and how to live healthier through food and diet have come about through my own issues. And so now I've been working with Clean now for the last 3.5 years as a wellness coach and helping to put together protocols. And that's where we are. And right now we're broadening from not only focusing on cleansing and detox, which is sort of the beginning of the program, but now broadening to things like digestive health and how to maintain wellness throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah, and digestive health is a huge issue for the U.S. population. It seems like a lot of people are suffering from one sort of digestive unease or another. Why do you think it's happening? Why do so many people have bloating and occasional constipation and then IBS and so many other issues? Why is it happening right now?
I think today it's probably 3 or 4 different factors that we can say pretty conclusively about why things are happening like this. The first one is that we're bombarded more and more with a range of different toxins that we definitely didn't have, let's say, even 100 years ago. So toxins that are coming in through our air, our food, and our water. And so these things are coming into our system, and our body has to deal with them in new ways. They're messing up the gut, and they're making it more difficult for the body to stay healthy and alive. All the processes in the bodies are getting shifted a little bit because we have to deal with these various toxins that are circulating throughout. Number 2 is that we've just increased antibiotic use. So antibiotics are killing lots of the good flora within our gut, and so that's wreaking havoc on the digestive system long term. So if we were taking antibiotics when we were 6 or 7, we might not feel repercussions until we're 15 or 20 or 30. The last one, I think, too, is stress.
Yeah,
stress
huge
is huge.
one.
So stress and the way that it functions on our digestive system, the way that it functions on our nervous system. So, and today what's different is in the past, let's say 10, 15,000 years ago, up to 40,000 years ago, we had stress that was in specific doses. So we'd have a moment where we were chasing a bear, or we were running away from something. We have these very specific moments of stress. Today we sort of have low-lying, underlying stress that's there all the time. Am I going to keep my job? How am I going to make money? How am I going to take care of my kids? Can I get them into the best school? All these kinds of factors. So stress is a huge one. And then the fourth one I'd probably say is something like processed foods. So processed foods is one of the main ways in which we are eating toxicity today. But the fact that foods are so processed with lack of fiber and levels of sugar and gluten that our system has never really dealt with in the past, we're having a whole influx of a whole new range of different symptoms. So I think in general, at least for the United States, that's probably some of the main reasons why people are getting this. And it seems like now that especially in the United States and Europe, we're becoming more and more self-aware that something is off. We start to notice digestive disorders where we never would have noticed them before.
Yeah.
So it's not a fad around gluten-free and all these different issues, but it's that, wow, we're finally noticing that like actually not feeling well after you eat something doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's coming to attention to a lot of people, but still there's lots of people who have IBS and they never go to the doctor because they're kind of putting up with it and think that's the only way that they can be.
Absolutely. And I think also that's the same thing around issues of health. A lot of times the old definition of health was you're free or you don't have any diseases. You're not sick.
Yeah.
But in reality now we're finding that levels of health can be increased to things that we were unaware of before. And so sometimes it takes to get on a specific diet or a specific program for a little while to actually discover that, wow, I actually can feel better than I thought I could. And health doesn't just mean not being sick.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about ways that we can achieve those higher levels of wellness. So you're not just kind of going through your day-to-day stuff, being alive, but you actually feel like you're vibrant and thriving, have lots of energy. Is there one particular way of eating that people can follow that would make most digestive issues feel better? Something to add, something to take away?
Yeah, it'd be great if there was. It would be great if there was one way. I think one thing that we've discovered in working and taking thousands of people through our cleanse and our different programs, that there's definitely no one way that works. We can get as simple as we can, and there's some basic things, maybe we'll talk about in a bit. There's some basic things people can do to help with digestive issues, but there's definitely no one diet. There's definitely no one way. It's really interesting how someone who actually thrives on things like rice and potatoes won't thrive on something like fruit. But someone who might thrive on fruit doesn't thrive on meat or rice and potatoes. So I think in general there's no one specific dietary path that works, but we definitely know now through science and also through the works of sort of Eastern works that there are certain things we can do to get us started on the path of discovering what our own personal diet looks like.
So how would you do that? How would you start discovering what is the best personal diet for somebody?
Yeah, so depending on which kind of background you're focused on, one of the places we really like is something called the Institute for Functional Medicine. The Institute for Functional Medicine is something that Dr. Junger is associated, and Clean stays pretty closely with the Institute. And the Institute really tries to bring together an integrated form of medicine that combines Eastern and Western modalities. Mm-hmm. And so what we kind of take from them, and this actually brings up a little bit of the question of whether or not cleansing or sort of digestive programs are sort of a new age fad.
Yes, that's an interesting one.
One of the things we like to say is that the Institute for Functional Medicine has been doing clinical research for years and years. They actually have a book, which we love showing, which is this book here. It's a 700-page book on the science of detoxification and the science of digestive health. So there's definitely a lot of work on it. And as we continue along and learn more and more about the digestive system, which is incredibly complex, we'll find more and more about it. So let's just go into then what's the kind of the first way you can do this. And what we would say is go on something like what we call an elimination diet. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of different ways people have formulated an elimination diet. The Institute for Functional Medicine has their own one. We at Clean have our own elimination diet. Someone who might be following a vegan diet has their own type of elimination diet. Yeah. So it really depends on where your path is. But you could easily look up something online like elimination diet, and you would see basically that everybody removes the major foods. And the major foods that tend to cause some kind of gut disturbance, and this is all depending on what your level of gut health is. Mm-hmm. If your level of gut health is really poor, you're going to have to probably eliminate a lot of things. And then if it's slightly poor, only a few things might work for you. But before I just tell you, maybe I'll just share a little bit about what the biggest ones are.
Yes.
But the process of the elimination diet, which we find to be more useful in determining what your gut disturbances are than, let's say, going for an allergy test. Because an allergy test a lot of times is only testing for what happened in the last 48 hours. And it's also less specific. So a lot of times someone will go, and Dr. Junger tells the story of someone who might go and get an allergy test and find, they're allergic to tomatoes. And so they have this sort of mental thing about tomatoes for the rest of their life. Every time they eat them, there's a tomato issue. But in reality, there might not be a tomato issue.
Okay.
Secondly, over time, when we get healthier and our gut changes, tomatoes might not cause us an issue anymore.
Yeah, so that's, I think, an interesting thing to make it clear to people that what you might be sensitive now, what might be difficult to digest right now, doesn't have to stay like this forever.
Because we're changing through time and we're changing through our lifestyle. And so the major issue, so when you take on an elimination diet, we would say that you want to take it on at least for 3 weeks, at least for 21 days, where you remove all of the major categories of food that cause digestive disturbance. And then after those 3 weeks, you would take a week or more to test each food. You'd bring one food back in, and we have a little process on how you do that. You bring one food back in, you eat it 2 to 3 times a day for 2 days, and then notice what your results are. Mm-hmm. And you start feeling sluggishness, or you start feeling mental fatigue. You start to know that this is a little bit of what we call a trigger food. So back to...
So what are those foods? What would somebody eliminate?
Right. So for So for us, the major foods we would eliminate, I'll just give you kind of the big five,
Yes, let's do it.
are absolutely gluten and all its gluten derivatives, which is barley, wheat, oats, rye.
Well, they have some gluten-free oats now.
Oats, because the way in which the immune system reads, if we know that the immune system is behind our digestive tract, the way the immune system reads these various things. Oats, yes, don't have gluten per se in it, but a lot of times the immune system is going to read the oats as some kind of parasite.
Oh,
so the reason gluten-free oats is they want to differentiate oats from gluten. But a lot of people still have an issue with oats. So on an elimination diet program, we remove oats. Now, you may test. There's a lot of people who, when they add oats back in, find that they test fine. But they eat gluten and they have problems.
Okay.
But there's no really know that until you take them all out in the beginning.
Okay, so perfect. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. So our first category would be gluten, including oats and gluten-free oats. Second major category is dairy, and that's all dairy. That's raw dairy, processed dairy, any dairy whatsoever is removed. The third one is sugar or any processed sugar. Now this is a big one because there's a lot of sweeteners and things that are out there, but for us, we recommend that one goes off of all of those things except fruit and stevia. Those are the only two. So everything else, so agave, honey, any processed sugar, which you'd find, basically, you can see gluten, dairy, and sugar, that's the major foods that you would find in a brownie or you find in a cookie. And that's the reason why those things disturb the gut the most. So it goes without saying processed foods we remove as well. And I'll just do the last two. The other major category of foods that are in the sort of vegetable kingdom is nightshades. So nightshades are tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and eggplant. And these are found to have a certain kind of toxin within them that's higher than other types of vegetables that sometimes can throw off digestive health. So it's good to test those. And finally, the last one, which everyone hates, but is alcohol. Alcohol sort of ravages the gut. It feeds yeast and fungus, candida. So that one is definitely something we need to, especially wine, we need to take out for those 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think alcohol is the huge one.
Yeah. Those are the major ones. When you see the elimination diet, there's other little details and specifics, peanuts and various things like that. But someone would have to kind of look at a full list to check that out.
So if somebody is really on the fence of doing an elimination diet and saying, well, my ancestors ate wheat for ages and ages and they ate it every day, why would I do an elimination diet now? Why am I doing all those detoxes? So let's talk about what our ancestors did, maybe kind of like a seasonal detox, and it's not really a new thing that came along.
Yeah, I think what is new is the way in which we're doing detox programs today. The way that we're incorporating certain kind of protocols. Using shakes, our ancestors didn't make shakes, they didn't take supplements. So all this stuff is new. And it's a benefit to the world of science that we've come up with these things. But it's true that it's definitely not a sort of new age fad. I mean, we can look primarily just at animals in nature. Now, whenever animals in nature are sick or have digestive disturbances, what they generally do is lay down and stop eating until it gets better.
Yep, they fast.
So they fast. So we can kind of take, now, we've come from animals, but we're not dogs and we're not per se monkeys. But that's what they do. We can kind of learn that that's sort of the natural process we've come from. And so I think I know that when I have relatives and all who say the same kind of thing, what our ancestors did. Well, first off, I just know I don't even know what my parents do most of the time. So the level of health of my ancestors is a little bit difficult for me to sort of ascertain from just saying they ate wheat and things like that. So we have no idea what their level of digestive health was. We know how long they lived, but we might not know how well they lived towards the end of their life. So I definitely think we can look in the past and see that, like you were saying, seasonal eating, right? Seasonal eating can be useful, and different people do seasonal eating differently.
Yeah.
So there's different cultures. Some people, in terms of seasonal eating, like to eat very little in the wintertime. Right? And then they're eating more in the summertime to kind of get their reserves ready for the winter. Some people do the reverse. They eat more to kind of stock up. And then in the summertime and spring, that's when they're eating lighter and less. That's when fruits and vegetables are in season. So depending on which culture we're talking about, they do it differently. But one thing is pretty sure, that most cultures have a kind of cycle of eating where they eat more and eat less.
Yes.
One of the benefits they have is that they didn't have to deal with processed foods. They had to deal with lesser levels of stress and toxicity. So because of that, perhaps their needs for cleansing was less than our needs today. But we definitely know from clinical research now that getting on some kind of balanced cleansing program, which for us would be different than doing something like water, cayenne, and maple syrup, that program, getting on a balanced cleansing program, can be incredibly useful for people.
Yeah, I agree. Balanced cleansing program that's not difficult to stay on would be so beneficial to most people. And then I think when we think back about our ancestors, they never had access to so much variety of foods throughout the whole year. They always had kind of limited products that they could choose from, and they had to spend lots more energy to get those foods.
Yeah. I think what's so interesting about that question about variety is that probably our ancestors had greater variety of fruits and vegetables. Some would say 300 different types of plants they would grow. And yet it's interesting how we have more variety today, but the variety is made up of all the same foods.
Yeah.
They all contain processed dairy, gluten, and sugar. They just mix them in different forms. So our variety today is actually a sort of false variety.
Yeah, that's a good one to note. So you mentioned that because of scientific development and because what you guys at Clean are doing, there has been some supplements or some ways that we can help people to improve their digestive health, whether they do it during elimination diet or something that they can keep doing even after they're done with elimination diet. So can you tell us a little bit about what supplements or what maybe even herbs somebody can take to help them heal their digestive tract?
Sure. And since this is kind of what we're working on for the next book around gut health, one thing about it is for someone who's just starting on this path and they might have some digestive upset, there's some really simple ways to do it. But I just want to kind of put it out there that for some people who have more difficult digestive issues, one of the major things around that is it just takes more time. It's actually not adding in more things. It just takes a longer amount of time. And to be honest, for some people, this could be 6 months. This could be a year to get to the place where we talk about healing the gut. It's the body that's really healing the gut. But to get to a place where our digestive health is really strong may take us longer than we think. But on the good side, to reduce digestive symptoms is relatively easy and relatively quick. So let's just say that the best supplement in some ways is the elimination diet.
Okay.
That's going to get rid of 50 to 60% of digestive symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about the elimination diet is it might not give you the sort of bang that you need to actually help your body fully repair your gut. So number one is the elimination diet. Okay. And then I'd say number two, this is before you buy anything, right? So elimination diet, and number two is time. So some people want it done in a week. It probably won't happen in a week. 3 weeks is a good bet that you're going to get rid of your symptoms in 3 weeks. So let's just say before people even get into supplements, elimination diet and time, both of which can be done without buying anything.
Yeah.
So that's a good start. So then in terms of supplements that are useful in sort of upping the odds of making your gut work a little bit better, probably number one, of course, which is what everyone's heard of, is a probiotic. And probiotics have different strains. There's lots of different strains. And there's also different levels. Mm-hmm. So in general, there's really good research that Lactobacillus and Bifidus, these two strains of probiotics are really useful. Also the DDS strain, you can also find that are really useful. So those are ones at least you'd want to look for in your supplement. And then we would say in general for people who are really wanting to kind of intensify, you want to get at least 50 billion a day. Mm-hmm. Maintenance could be around 15 billion. But if you're kind of getting into a program, 50 billion to 100 billion a day would be really useful. So that's number one, probiotic. Number two is L-glutamine.
Okay.
And L-glutamine is one of the major amino acids that helps heal the gut lining.
Yeah.
So that's useful. And there's a couple different ways to take that. But yeah, L-glutamine's great. And we would say, you can definitely go up to 5,000 milligrams, even a bit more a day. So glutamine would probably be number two. And then the third one And these are the simple ones. You have probiotic, you have your L-glutamine, and then the third one would be some kind of prebiotic. And a prebiotic is basically something that helps feed the good bacteria in the gut. And you can get this from eating fruits and vegetables. But there's some other things that we like. Chicory root can sometimes be really helpful.
Coffee alternative made out of chicory root.
What's that?
Ticino has chicory root and inulin that helps to feed, that acts as prebiotic.
Exactly. That's one. And then we also love something called beta-glucan. Beta-glucan is a sort of a mix of prebiotics, probiotics all together. So in general for gut health, we would say that's probably the three big ones. And then to supplement that, one more would be some kind of antimicrobial. An antimicrobial would have, as you said, what are some good herbs? So these are the herbs that would be useful in knocking out yeast, fungus, pathogenic organisms in the gut. That's going to help rebalance where the intestinal flora is. Get rid of the bad, help the good grow.
So what herbs would that be?
So there's a lot of them out there, but some of the good herbs for that would be berberine root, wormwood, cloves, black walnut. So you can kind of look, if you're at the store or something, you can look for something called an antimicrobial. You can also look for things that are herbal antiparasitics.
Okay.
Some good brands out there that will have those three components. And those are things you don't want to take long term, but they're useful to take, for a 3-week period. So those are probably the big ones. Those are the big digestive. Now, once you kind of get into a program and you start to see what some of your issues are, you might find that other supplements might help, other amino acids, other things. But as a general thing, because the general only works for a certain number of people, that's the that in general seem to work.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned a little bit about allergy testing, that sometimes it's not as effective. So to just repeat it for people who are not willing or hoping for that quick one doctor visit, get all the answers type of thing, tell us a little bit about why food sensitivity tests would not always be as effective.
Yeah, this is something that that Dr. Younger's really kind of taught me, and that in his practice he had basically people taking these tests, having these things be a problem and then not be a problem. The fact that for a lot of the tests it's only measuring a certain amount of certain kind of something that is flowing in the bloodstream for the last 48 hours. So the details and the specifics, I'd have to get him to kind of chime in on in his practice, because I've never given an allergy test as not being a doctor. But it's a big principle of Dr. Younger's that allergy tests can be flawed, and that the best way is to go on an elimination diet. In fact, Dr. Younger doesn't even recommend people get allergy tests anymore. He says the best thing, if you really want to find out and really deal with your digestive health, it's to do a 3-week program. Now, if you're not willing to do that, you're probably not going to be willing to clear up your digestive issues anyway. So that's a process of education that someone just has to come to on their own. Maybe they wait till they are suffering too much. But in general, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
3 weeks on the elimination diet, and then a week or more of reintroducing those foods one at a time to decide, okay, this one works, this one doesn't work.
Makes sense. So one of the things that when people go on a new diet, or even on some sort of a detox, if it's not elimination diet, if they go on a juice fast or some sort of raw food thing, a lot of them start having constipation. And a lot of programs, or even some people on their own, will start taking laxatives, like herbal detox type of laxatives, which turns habitual. What do you think is the long-term effect of taking something like this, and how do you go away from that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in general, in terms of herbal laxatives, and our favorite, and we just like saying this, our favorite, which is not really a laxative, but it's sort of a relaxant, is Natural Calm. So it's a magnesium supplement. So we recommend actually taking more magnesium to help release the bowels, because it's also giving us one of the major minerals that most people in our culture are lacking, which is magnesium. So it's kind of a two-part question, because the first part is that actually herbal laxatives during a cleansing program are really important and are great to use, because the fact that releasing a lot more waste and all. It's if it gets backed up, we're going to have more symptoms, more issues. And the reason why that's a problem, people who are very, very into naturopathy might say you want to deal with those symptoms. Just let them come up and your body will deal with them. We're much more interested in the issue of what we call compliance. It's the doctor's major issue. How do we keep someone on the program to complete it?
Yeah.
So a great way for that is to help out our organs in such a way that, our bowels and all sometimes for a lot of people are really backed up. So natural laxatives are wonderful to take during a cleansing program. And to take them daily on a cleansing program is fine. We found in general if someone is taking natural laxatives for less than 6 months, it's not really an issue in terms of becoming the body habitually connected to having to use that.
Okay.
But probably, like anything, any supplement that's taken long-term for years and years will create some kind of habit. And so we would say, feel free, and this is our position, but feel free to take those natural laxatives when doing a program. In fact, it's probably for us essential that you do. But then after a period of time, it's best to stop them. And it's best to stop them because, our body forms a habit. It's just like if one was eating bananas only. We would probably have an issue at a certain point with that. Or any other foods we eat, we start to have an issue. But backed up constipation is probably one of the number one issues that we deal with.
Yes.
Here at Clean.
Yeah, I agree. So that was so much information. Thank you for sharing all of it. And would you mind telling us a little bit more about the clean diet and how can people learn more about it, where they can go, and if they do decide to do an elimination diet, what's the best way to start?
Sure. So a simple way to see just kind of what we do and what our program is you can take a look at the book called Clean by Dr. Alejandro Junger. Sort of the first place. You can get that on Amazon or in bookstores. Second place is you can just go to our website, cleanprogram.com. And on there, you can just see everything. All the manuals are up there. All the information about the Cleanse program is all there open for you to check out. What's that?
There are tons of free recipes and books.
Lots of recipes. We have a community online that if you're a little bit still on the fence, you can sort of join the community and just kind of troll around, see what people are doing, see how people are feeling. So that's probably a good way to start checking out what Clean does. And you might find it's useful. A lot of times we just tell people before they get into doing a cleanse is just to go on the elimination diet. But what we found is a lot of times our psychology works in such a way where when someone has a program, it has a beginning and an end. And it's easier to push past the resistance that keeps us from change by saying, okay, I'm going to do a program for this amount of time. Which is why I think some wellness practitioners and all find if they say, okay, I just put someone on an elimination diet, it's not time specific, and so people kind of fall off. But if you have a program per se, and so that's why what we try to do at Clean is create protocols and programs that that are ways where people are actually going to do them. So that's kind of so check out Clean. You can always email us and call us all the time. We're around. We like talking to people. You can email me. My email is just John, John, at cleanprogram.com if you've heard this and have any questions or things like that.
Cool. That's great.
I'm going to throw in just one last thing.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of the overarching thing that I've sort of learned since going through my health issues and, being with Clean for the last 3 years and us developing all our stuff here is that getting out of the mindset that there's just one way is huge. Getting out of the mindset that this is anything but a journey for you and that if you find a little roadblock at some point, there'll be another way. If you find a little roadblock there, there'll be another way. And to keep testing, not get too locked into a program, and find some kind of wellness coach that you really resonate with. And work with them until the moment where they say, there's only one way and you have to do it this way.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that it's a journey about learning from your body, learning about your body, listening to its feedback. And one of the best ways to listen to your body's feedback is when your body is clean and you can actually hear it. Absolutely. And sometimes to get to that place where your body's relatively clean, where you can hear that, you got to stick with the program that maybe feels uncomfortable for a little while. Yes.
2 to 3 weeks in a program should be at least enough time. If it's a good program, about 3 weeks, should be enough time for at least your body to become resonant with which foods work and don't work for you. And that's where, for me, the best part is. We can get away from having, there's a million doctors and a million people out there on TV shows and all, and programs telling us what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. We like the approach that start on a program, get into it, but the goal of the program is to show you which foods work best for you, so you no longer need the program anymore.
Exactly. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And we'll put all the details how can people get in touch with you.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for contacting us. We appreciate it.